Morning, everyone. So we're gonna do a list review of some WTC Warriors lists, and I've decided there's like 16 of them. A bit too many for me to go through all of them, honestly. So I picked three um, that I am most interested in talking about. I don't think that means that there's anything wrong with the other ones you guys picked. There's a couple girlfriend lists with like double Forsaken, double Wretched, and I'm not gonna talk about that. That's just honestly, it's the joke is it's not that hard to play. You give it to your girlfriend. She could probably score a lot of points with it. That's not to say it's a bad list for teams. It has a lot of good pairings with like demons and stuff, but it just feels super boring, and I don't want to talk about it. So apologies to those I don't talk about. Doesn't mean your list is bad. In fact, one list I'm not going to talk about. Maybe I'll touch on the way. Maybe I'll do four. The only reason I'm adding this one potentially is because I was asked for a list that had kind of these things in it, and I gave them the list, and they made a change or two to it. But it's we'll see if I talk about it. But we're gonna just start right off. Okay, here we go. So the first list is the Belgian Warriors list, and by Nico Hermans, Prince Charming. And I've actually been talking to him on Discord since we were talking on, you know, the boards, the forum, and so the thing I think is very interesting about this list is he takes the chosen lord that I was running in last event, and I will disclaimer as much as I like to take credit for it, I did not create this chosen lord build, but he took that chosen lord and he said okay, and then I had a master Evo guy too, and he said okay, let's drop the herald and let's take a burning blade guy on a horse. And what that does is, other than being 180 points less than the Herald, is it opens up two more uh, monster slots. And so essentially, besides the core being mixed up, he really just dropped the knight unit, which was like 430 points, and they used the 180 extra points to get 600. And he put in two giants, and I think he took a halberd instead of a gray weapon, and his core is different. But we both had close to min core. So he, if you want to really like put it out there, is he took a herald, a knight unit, and turned it into a chosen lord and two giants. And on paper, that is actually kind of interesting in that it probably feels like it's better with the giants, right? Because you could argue that the herald is not as fighty as the chosen lord, but he has more. You know, he has three spells. He has a little bit more flexibility. And then giants versus knights. You know, single models have reign supreme in some instances, but at the same time, giants are probably a little more lackluster than you would. They're probably not as good as you think they are. I feel like they're better on paper sometimes. I'm sure they're fine. Not being swift stride. You know, they do die to a lot of things. They're 7 resistance, 5, 6 up armor saves, so they're not exactly killing it in the defense department. But they move 14. They have decent chaffing opportunities. He took a monster familiar, so actually his magic phase is pretty good. You know, he has the 4 spells from the sorcerer, but he also adds in another spell from the giant. So honestly, if you want to go, more shooty magic, you can go Hellfire snipes. You can go breath weapon on the giant, or you can take Hellfire on the giant. Or if you want to go more combat, you can go Alchemist Alloy, or not Glory of Gold on the giant, and then more buffs on the other guys. And actually, with the Burning Blade, you get 2 opportunities for reroll to wound, because you can either get obviously Spectral Blades off, or you can get the Monstrous Familiar Glory of Gold off with the Alchemy attribute. So there are some advantages there. This is probably a little more skewy. Like, if you really think about it, the Herald gives you a lot of flexibility in matchups to have Comet, maybe a little bit more stronger magic phase. Whereas the Burning Blade really helps in some matches. Even though I don't necessarily think Ogres is a horrible match, like he's just, it's a nightmare for Ogres to deal with him. Undead, he kills half their army is really bad against him. So from a pairing perspective, maybe if you get it into the right matches, this is an advantage in that case. And I think that's something I've even thought about with my my own builds, even though I really love the Herald, obviously, but I think there's something to be said for, you know, in an 8-man teams, if you're going to be paired for in some way, do you just go all the way and say, okay, I don't need the flexibility? And I actually think we'll kind of see this maybe a little bit the other way with some of the other lists, but and maybe the answer is no. Maybe, it helps to just be able to have those tools in certain matches that you can at least play it out. So that being said, I really think it's like kind of a cool idea. Again, that Chosen Lord with Burning Blade could be a Feldrick Ancestor with Supernatural Dex, and that's 90 points more, but then you'd have to drop the Giants, and then because you don't have monster slots, because the Chosen Lord has to be the General, the other guy, and then you get Knights back. And I don't think it's that bad. I think Knights are comparable to Giants in their own way, having a 1-up save. Then you can go down the route of saying, oh, well, now you have things that are bad against Alchemy Magic. Because in this list, at least, you can say, sniping down Barbarian Horseman to get to the Chosen Lord is not exactly, you know what I mean? He'll just switch to another unit. Or he'll have to kill too many to get there, and it just doesn't go fast enough. So perhaps you will say, this list isn't bad against Alchemy because getting to the characters is not easy fast enough with Alchemy. And there's no 1-up save Knights or Chosen Knights just to, take you out. It has 5 flares. It's missing dogs, missing quote unquote. I do like the Fallen for the, the character bunker. It only has 3 scoring. Even though mine had 4, at least one was a Knight unit, even though I took the Barbarian unit on foot. So that's probably something that scares me. I do think while you might say, oh, more monsters are better, I don't know. I feel like the Knight unit just provides a lot of... It's Swift Stride, it's armored, it can hold things really easily, it's scoring. It has a lot of advantages in its own right. It really zones space well while your single models do things, and maybe the Giants don't stick up for that, or stand. I don't know if it's worth it. Is what the point is. But I still think it's very cool. You have very 2 strong lords. Again, he has to greed because he needs enough hero points to get all the items. He has a 4-up save. He could have saved 60 points and went 1-up rerollable, but versus snipes and cannons and stuff, you might just want the 4-up, and versus lethals and stuff. I mean, there's reasons to have it. Obviously, it's worse against some things, but anything's AP3 or more, it's the same or better. I don't know. I like it. I want to see how it does. I'm not sold on having 2 extra single models and this Chosen Lord, because I don't even love having to take the Sorcerer. I like the idea of a Monstrous Familiar Giant. I'm not sold on it because, again, I talked about this before. You basically take a model and you say, all right, you're a single model that stomps and has attacks, and we're going to give you a spell and take away, and you're going to have to pay to take. He's paying 15 points to be -1 strength and have a spell. Right? That's really how you have to think about it. And now, if you want this model to be on the flank somewhere, you kind of have to play him differently because the spell's only 18 inches. So again, I don't know if I'm sold on this kind of thing. But I love this list. It's aggressive. I think he should get paired for. Otherwise, why would you take a list like this? So this is really one I'm looking out for. And I know I've heard very good things about him as a player. So let's just find the next list. Sorry, guys, if I miss your list. This is the one I want to talk about. So this is Felix of Germany. So this team is a lot of 8th edition ETC guys. And this guy actually... When I played Screams back in 8th edition, I actually learned how to play them from him on, we would talk on Facebook, and in one of my videos, if you do Surgrim Screams to Victory, has a song about a GT I went to, and he's actually in it with a picture of me. So I've met him, and I think these guys are just coming back to play this tournament, and I don't think he made this list. I think it's something with the way people dropping or something, he had to end up playing it. But we're going to talk about it anyway because I know Thomas had some influence on it, which you can tell from the favorite giant. From an ETC perspective, that favorite giant is not allowed, so it's probably less interesting just because of that. But it could be a normal giant. You could shift points somewhere else. Let's just talk about it. So here's a Herald General, perfect. Sorcerer Adept, so he takes, this is kind of like the Chariot guy, but you're paying 200 points to put him on a monster. I mean, he has the Binding Scroll, he has a lot of items. Is 670 worth it? I'm not 100% sure how good this model is. I mean, if you really want to upgrade the Chariot, I mean, it fights way better, right? It fights better, it has stomps. It's not as defensive, but it has 7 wounds. And when you have, 4 other monsters, or, Herald, this guy, Elder, Giant, like, it's something to be said that they can't put everything on this one guy. I'm glad he's playing it. I'm actually curious how it does, because I'm not sold on a Behemoth Mage, is what I kind of want to say, where, I think it's cool. It's still a very good Magic phase, the Magic phase we used to play with. I've made lists with the Chariot guy, and then probably using the extra 200 points to get, like, the Barb Chief. But I also had 2 Elders, so it was a little different. Like, this list would just be different. Core, it's perfect 900 core, 3 scoring like it used to be. I kind of said this on the forums where people were talking about Lust and how expensive it is, and are people going to go back to Lust? The answer might just be we go back to Lust. You can look at this and say, man, this is 330 points. I used to pay 300 for it. I probably used to pay 280 for it, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, think of it this way. You pay 900 points in core, right? So don't think of this. Take these numbers out, these 330, 338. If I told you that in the old edition you could take 3 times 10 Lust for 900, and now you have to take, don't worry about points, 2 times 10 Lust and 10 Barbarian Horsemen with Command and Great Weapons, is that really so bad for the same price? On the forums I said this too. You could make an argument that the Barb Horseman unit has a lot of advantages over the Lust unit in its own right? You don't need potentially 3 Strider units out of core. It's faster. It has a champion that can lock down things easier. It's better versus monsters because it can hold it up, and it still has a great weapon. It can still flee. It can be emergency chaff. It's still cheap, but it's also fast enough to be chaff, annoyingly. So yeah, like if you think of it as like a dog unit, right? Like it's kind of like a halfway between a dog unit and a warrior unit in its own right. It's kind of like an amalgamation of it. Like you don't really care if you have to sacrifice it, you sacrifice it, but it can still flank units and potentially break them, and it has a much longer charge range for combo charging. So I think from a pure like standpoint of those two, 3 times 10 Lust and 2 times 10 Lust and 10 Barbed Horsemen, I don't think you lose much. And I think, we talk about the Pride being 40 points less, but you really do lose a lot. Like, people talk about the ability to flee. Again, I made a post about this. Ability to flee is great. That is probably the main reason. But it's not like you're just paying 50 points for the ability to flee. You're paying 50, 40, whatever the points is, for the ability to flee, for the ability to rally and move on a minimized 9, right? So that's huge. Like, the fact that you can move again is really big. Because usually, otherwise you're out of the game. Like, you're essentially getting an extra turn of movement. And the other one is your Strider. And people laugh at that one sometimes. But the fact that you can go through runes and not, lose a 20-point model, a 30-point model, 33 points per model, essentially, in this one. Maybe 30 points per wound, because there's 11 wounds. You don't want to lose that to ruins or lakes and stuff. So just being able to go through a forest and be steadfast still. Like, Strider is really good on this unit. It just gives you can just put them wherever you want and not care. And in fact, it makes them more durable because, if things have to charge them into Strider, and I talk about why Strider is really good in another video, like, they don't care and the enemy does. So I think this core setup's fine if you want to get your chaff out of core. I still think in fact, it's probably more annoying for me who ran the 10 Lust, 8 Horsemen, 8 dogs, because now that is 60 points more, and there's not really a good way to get it below, other than going to Pride. It's not really a good way to get it back to 900 points. But we could always say dogs suck and fuck them, right? So that's something as well. So I know I focused on the core, but I do think this core setup might just become popular again, or big units will become popular. So he's Pride with Flaming Standard. I'm not going to be opposed to that. Pride is cheaper than the other ones. You're minimized, which is really good for a lot of checks. Pride's free, I think. A Feldrake Elder with Great Weapon, we like that. 3 Feldrakes with great weapon, so I guess he's out of monster points. You could say that was one of the monsters. He has a favorite giant. Again, I think a favorite giant is much better than. I'll put it this way: I probably won't take a giant ETC, not 100%. But if favorite giants were allowed at ETC, I'd consider them because I think they are a really good substitute for like an elder or something when it comes to monster slots. So he fills a 6. He essentially, he gets to take the behemoth and a giant instead of the second elder, and he has a chaff unit and flares, and he gets an extra story. He has 5 scoring, which is probably a little bit over the top, at least for how I play warriors. Like you could even, I think another thing to go with is Wilhelm at ETC took 2 times 10 lust and 2 times 8 dogs, but he took 2 times 11 lust actually because you had to take 11 to get to min core, and because of the lust increase, you could take 2 times 10 dogs, 2 times 8 dogs, 2 times 10 lust, and then one with the standard. You'd be like 8 points over core, but that's basically the same thing as he took. Instead of 11 man units, he has to drop 1 warrior. Now, why is 11th warrior okay? It's decent because if you get charged by something that has a monstrous rank and it's a character, for example, a behemoth mage, you are still steadfast if your champ dies, whereas now you wouldn't be because you'll lose the guy in the back. So sure, 11th model has purposes, but like overall, it doesn't really change how that army plays. Like it doesn't matter if there's 10 or 11 warriors that much. I mean, like I said, there are uses for that 11th guy, but your army doesn't crumble. So you can take 2 times 10 lust guys and 2 dogs, and then 1 will be a standard. It'll be 8 points over core. Still works. It's kind of like my rant there about how the lust change. Like I could see just keeping with lust and just making little changes like this. So I think you could make that change in this list if you really wanted. Drop the horsemen for the dogs. Drop the flare. I don't know. It would start to crumble a bunch of things. Anyway, I think this list has a nice mix of speed. Really curious how the different monsters go. A little bit of everything. A knight unit, a Feldrake unit. I do think the Feldrakes with great weapons are pretty nice. Strength 7 is always going to be pretty good. There's not a ton of Strength 7 in this list, especially with the Chosen being Pride and not Greed, and the Elder has Strength 8. And yeah, so I actually like this list a lot. I think it'll do, I don't know how many games Felix will have of 9th age before he plays this, but this could become a decent ETC thing if you like drop the giant to a normal giant and stuff like that. Alright, let's keep going. Where is this? The Warriors? There's a Warriors that I helped make. Was not that guy. Was it that guy? Was not that guy. It's one of the German lists. Where is the German list? Wasn't this one? I kind of wanted to talk about this one, but it's kind of like the other one I just talked about, just a little bit. Like this was the giant. The core is a little different, where he takes Fallen instead of dogs, or instead of the horseman unit, which I think is fine. He separates the mage from the thing. I'm not talking about that one. Not this list. Where is it? Come on, Blackie, where are you? You're the coach of it. I'm gonna find it. Is this is it? Okay. We're gonna just talk real quickly. This is essentially the list. This is the core I talked about. How I would run this. So this is just, he needs to make a general, what has to be the Herald in this. Doesn't have to be, but the Herald would be the general. So he's doing Exalted Herald, the Wing King guy with Pride with flies. He put a trophy rack on it, which I think if you have the points, you might as well. You need Pride here because of this guy. So that is some reason to have Pride here. He took a Sorcerer Mage, which I kind of like. He didn't take, instead of the Binding Scroll, he took Rod of Battle. I could argue that I prefer Binding Scroll just because of the strong pieces in this list. It's better to have Binding, and you already have 5 spells, but I could see the wanting to have 6 spells. Solid Core, again, you're taking Pride over Lust. I do think the Pride ones work fine. They just work differently. 8 Warhounds. 6... this was kind of something I just threw in, but... Stalker Standard Knights. 620, Knights when they hit hard. And being able to go into runes, get reroll 1s on the charge, reroll 1s to hit when you charge is really big on this. This Knight unit puts out a lot of freaking damage when it charges. I kind of want to use this unit on my own, because it is 100 some, it's like 60 to 100 points less than a Chosen Knight unit. It has its own advantages, so I really do think this list is kind of cool. Again, he didn't take. I think I had a paired weapon guy, and he dropped it because he put points elsewhere. But this is kind of cool list. I'm curious to see how it does because I keep talking about this flying guy, and I never take him. So maybe one day. So the last list is the Polish list, which is actually a lot different than the list we've been seeing. Where is it? It would be up then, right? So this list is something that has been doing well in Poland. This is like some young guy. I think Furion taught him or something. I don't know. His apprentice, he said. So this is a list. And it's been doing well in Poland. He hasn't played really international events. So that's one reason I'm really curious to see him at this event. Because he will be playing better people, hopefully. And I'm not unsold on his list, but I'm not sold on his list yet. But we'll talk about it. So, I mean, the big thing straight away is he's taking a Shrine Master. He's taking a Shrine Master. And it's 890 points, 30 points more than a Herald. So you can make some... What's the word I'm looking for? You can make some comparisons to the Herald in its own way. Other than it being no monster points, which actually matters in this list. I do think this model, so it's pretty straightforward. He's a Veilwalker Evo with Legion Standard is whatever. I guess he's going to go in here, and if you go 24, you go with 32 models, 5 wide. You can keep an extra rank, which is probably fine if he goes in there at all. I don't think he's always going in there, but if he does. And he has, like, I think a 2-up, 5-up, and Lord of the Damned is obviously with Forsaken one, so you could say, okay, that item is really for the Forsaken ones. You don't really have to take it, so he's basically the cost of a Herald. So for the cost of a Herald, you get a guy that has similar survivability, I would say. He's 2-up, 5-up versus 4-up, 4-up. 5 wounds. Herald's healable. They both can hide. Herald's easier to hide, technically. Herald can heal and have hard target and stuff. So I would say when it comes to getting cannon and stuff off the board, you don't want either of them to get hit, but Herald's better against that kind of stuff. Fighting-wise, this is 2d6 strength 4 auto hits. Herald is 6 strength 5 or 6 strength 6. So, I mean... I don't think there's any ones that's going to tell you, fighting-wise, you'd rather have the Shrine than the Herald, unless you're playing, like, Demons, maybe, but it is, it's whatever. They're very different models in that case. And from a wound perspective, I actually don't think the Herald's harder. I think it's about as easy to kill if you take, if you're really worried about some type of range damage, you can hide them either one, and you can take healing and stuff on the Herald. So where it really is, I mean, it's really the magic, right? Like let's be honest, you're never going to make the argument that one's more versatile than the other. It's the magic. So I do think this is one of the single strongest magic phases in the game from a pure... I'm not going to say for points. You could take, people can take double masters and stuff. But just, there's a lot of power in this magic phase that would probably only be more powerful with damn it. What's the item? Ledger of Souls is probably the only thing that could make this magic phase probably more like, ridiculous. But why do I say it's one of the most powerful magic phases? Well, from he has 5 spells, that's it. But from a 5 spells perspective, he's going to always have Hellfire. He's going to always have Grave Calls, Comet, or Whispers, which he's going to take Grave Calls and Comet almost every time. One of the two. So it's just so versatile in that case. If you have big monsters and he needs to freaking, just access the Comet, period. Which the Herald has, but being a Master Mage is a little bit better in that case. Just having access to Comet automatically can tip the balance of a matchup. If it's a shooty army or whatever, you just automatically get kind of that advantage. I have the ability to sit back and say, screw you, I'm going to drop Comets. And the Herald can do it too, but 3 dice in a Comet is a little harder on a Herald. I guess there's no argument to say it's not as bad to blow up. Either guy blowing up themselves is really bad. So, I won't even argue that that's pretty bad either way. That's why, he can't fit it. Yeah, he can't fit it, but, that's why Scepter would be really kind of cool in this guy. But he gets Veilwalker with, to be fair, we'll get into this afterwards. Anyway. So he has Comet or Grave Calls, and then he has probably 2 or 3 buffs, depending on if he wants to, or he could take Snipes. I mean, if you're bad against Snipes, he can go Veilwalker Snipes, Hellfire, Comet, and one buff, and just say screw it. I'm gonna deal with one buff, but I'm gonna snipe the shit out of you. And like if you sit back, you can't. Like unless you can get through his units, which are very difficult to get points off of unless you have big range damage, because they're like res 5, res 6, big warrior units. Like he might just win the grind and win the objectives in that case. So he has that ability just to sit back and throw Veilwalker spells at you. And the great part about Evo is, and you can make the argument of Evo, Occultism, Alchemy. I think Evo is the obvious choice. And I'll say the thing that solidifies that choice for me personally is getting a Veil token back when you get a spell off. Because Veilwalker can eat up your Veils pretty quickly, and so being able to get one every turn is really, really useful. If they're bad against snipes, you go double snipes Veilwalker. If they're sitting in a corner, you take your common. If they're big, aggressive, Scourge type things, you go Hellfire, Grave Calls, and when they come in front of you, you're just like bombing 2 spells at them with Hellfire and Grave Calls and rerolls and stuff. Now, I feel like the argument, the thing that's unfair to me, quote unquote, is like, he has almost all the spells a Herald does, right? If I really, now I only have 3 spells, but if you assume that he's going to take 2 buffs, the only thing the Herald can't do is the snipes, which is a big thing. I'm not going to deny that. Having, 30-inch hand to Touch of the Reaper and 24-inch snipers and Touch of the Reaper is much bigger than what the Herald can do. But when it comes to like those bombing big spells, like you take Veilwalker and the Herald, and you can have Comet, Grave Calls, and Hellfire, which he can't do. He can't have all 3. Or just 2 of them, So he has that ability to, if I face a Scourge, I take Veilwalker all the time, and I just 4 dice, Veilwalker. The only downside is I don't get +1 to cast, but when you're throwing 4 dice at it, do you really care? I also have the ability to move much faster and get safely, and if, say you take Fly Veilwalker, I can, like, run next to a Scourge, and there's nothing he can do. Scourge can sort of come at this guy in his own right. But, yeah, I don't know. The more I, talk about him, the more I'm like, this is a really cool magic phase, and it's really powerful, a Veilwalker Comet coming down in the middle of an army is super nasty, but again, the Herald can do a lot of it too, so I don't know why this guy is, I talk myself out of him every time. I get he has more spells, and I have to take another spell, and he would be cheaper than both of them combined. I'm spending 440, 860, 13, I'm spending 1,200 points on my magic, 1,300 points on my magic. But they're both fightier. It's like, I don't know. I guess you can't do the rest of his list with a Herald. Maybe it's just simple as that. You can't do the rest of his list with a Herald. But I guess I was coming in here thinking, it gives you so much more agency. I don't know if I believe that. You can take a Herald and sit behind a fucking terrain piece and do the same shit this guy does. Yeah, you don't get the snipes. You can do Mark for Doom if you want, but I don't know. I'm not buying it completely. I'm not saying it's a bad list, but I'm not totally buying the Veilwalker Battle Shrine guy completely. We'll keep going. Supernatural Death's Ancestor. Great. He has an extra... I don't know why he's the general and not the other guy. Is it for Leadership 9? It must be for Leadership 9. No. Most things are Leadership... I don't know why. Most things are Leadership 9. And the Flares are the only thing you would need Leadership 9 for. It makes the Shrine, sure, a lot of expensive if he dies, but is the Ancestor more likely to die? I don't get that. Because you don't also need the... You don't also... I can see taking the move spell on the Shrine guy would be really nasty, too. That is something I really like. I don't understand why he's the general, per se. To be completely honest with you. Because the Veldrakes are already 9. Forsaken One don't care that much. For reform checks. I guess it's fair. I still don't like it. I feel like because if you wanted him to throw away. Anyway, he's a very strong model. We've talked about lists with him where, instead of we go Magic Light and you take like a super fighty guy with him. This guy is spending 150 points to make his unit be able to flee. I don't know if I like that or not. I guess you got to spend your core points some way. So he wants the ability to flee and to sit in terrain piece, I guess. It doesn't give it to the Wizard Master if he's in there. So if you're in like a wall or something, or going through the ruins. It's still very bad for the battle shrine if he's in that unit at all. And they don't even benefit from it, right? Because your 15 plus 8 is 23. You're not going to have the rank. But he's min core. He's 9 points over, whatever. He's 9 points over core. Big lush unit with rending. I guess it's a big scoring unit. He gets to his min core. 2 Feldrake units with halberds, full command. 2 Forsaken ones. 2 flares with skinning lashes. He does well in Poland. And I know in the whatever game versus Furion he won, which I actually think his list is actually pretty good versus Furion's list. Not just because of the magic, because of the beef. It's really annoying to deal with a lot of these things. Again, it's not a bad list. I just don't get why some of the choices were made, and if I think it's good or not. I haven't decided. I definitely want to hear about the stories about it played. I'm interested to see it played. I don't know if I want to play it myself and try it. I'm curious if it plays more aggressive than it looks. I mean, it has some very fast pieces. Let's be honest. If you want to go, if we talk from an aggressive standpoint, the Forsaken one take a little bit to get going, but with the magic phase this guy has, he doesn't have to run out there turn 1 and be like, I'm coming for you. But when he wants to go, it's 2 Feldrake units. It's not as maneuverable as Elders are, but you could say that the Forsaken ones with rerolls and all that kind of stuff kind of give a little bit of zoning protection to the flanks. So, it prevents some people from running around your Feldrake units as easily. So it kind of goes well with them. You don't need the movement of single models as much. No, it's 9 strength 6. It has more attacks than a Feldrake has. It works well with the spells. With the buffs and the debuffs, while still taking advantage of their edgy 3-4 on the charge. Forsaken ones are not easy to deal with. You could say, some of their weaknesses are Pyro, which isn't that popular. And yet, if you take Pyro, you're pretty garbage versus most things in this list, right? You have a 0-up save guy, you have an Ancestor, and Feldrakes. You're just Pyro sucks versus this list. Alchemy isn't even that good versus this list unless you can pick out the stupid sorcerer guy with bolts or something. Like, what are you doing? What is alchemy doing to this list? And that's some advantage of it, I will say. Magic wise, Div is probably the best lore versus it, maybe because it's so good versus for the Forsaken ones. But I don't know. And maybe it's fun. Maybe it's just so hard to deal with Forsaken ones that it kind of has the advantage of Forsaken ones go up and hold something, and then this Ancestor blows into you and blows you up or something. So, and then lashes. I mean, I do think for 20 points, is it better than Shield and Champion to go just lashes, right? Because there's another list that had 2 flares with Shield and Champion versus Lash. I do like lashes a lot. Just to be annoying, and if you're playing kind of a dancing game like an army that doesn't have shooting, you can just lash them a little bit. And for 20 points, 5 auto strength 4, even if you just do it once, even versus some if you kill 3 Myrmidons and then you die as a chaff, it kind of has its uses, right? Maybe it's I don't know. I kind of get the mage. If you put 2 characters together, if you were to buy a shrine separately and a mage separately, it's kind of nice to put them together. You lose a spell technically, but you gain a much better spell with Veilwalker, with Comet Veilwalker. Again, I don't hate it. It's just, but I guess you can't get the rest of the list by taking a Herald or anything like that. And really, what do you gain from having your mage on foot? Basically, you want to kind of take something to get that extra, not only get the extra spell, but you want to take something. There would be a shrine or whatnot on its own. You might as well put it with him and hide him if you need to. And I guess if they don't have anything to kill him with, which is probably more things than you think, you can't just straight up fuck with him. It's hard to get to him. I mean, he has the Ancestor kills a lot of things. He could be in a giant warrior unit. He has Feldrakes and Forsaken one to protect him. So maybe it's just really good at scenarios. Again, it does seem a little weird that like is two of his scoring are like, oh, he's four scoring. Okay, that's a little better. I forgot that he had the barbarians. Eh, eh. I'm curious. It's one of the more unique ones here. It's definitely not a style that um, is popular right now. And maybe after this tournament, again, he's done well in Poland. He doesn't really play the best Polish people all the time. So this is a really good test. I'm not saying he seems like a good player. I know Furion likes the list. He's on the team with the ETC guys. Maybe he'll be at ETC. But I'm really curious about this list. All right, I think that's the ones I wanted to hit on. Yeah, we'll see how they do in a couple weeks. So maybe we'll talk about it afterwards and see who they get. And again, I think a lot of it could be who they're pairing for, right? You know, obviously you would pair differently for this list, who kind of has a little bit more tools versus a lot of things, but maybe not as maybe it isn't as aggressive as the others. Versus like the first one we looked at, where it's like, oh right, you know, this guy's going in, and you better give him the pairing to go in and kill everybody, right? So that's kind of a difference as well. The other one is very more Polish style, though. All right, thanks for listening.